The book of John, chapter 11, verse 35. I went to my rocking chair down by the creek tonight, and I said, Lord, I don't want to open my mouth if it's not from you. What would you have me say? And he gave me something to say. And when our pastor delivered his message, I knew right then. That's confirmation. So maybe somebody in here, the Lord's trying to get a hold of and give them some kind of encouragement for whatever I'm getting ready to give out to you. I notice that a lot, how he does things, where sometimes these messages will be interlinked. And only the Lord can do that. Pastor Jay and I did not exchange notes.
No.
But this time, let's look at John chapter 11. Drop down to about 21. Let's start in at verse 21. And what happened here is Martha's brother Lazarus had just died. And she says, Then said Martha unto Jesus, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. But I know that even now, whatsoever thou wilt ask of God, God will give it thee. Amen. Jesus said unto her, Thy brother shall rise again. Martha said unto him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at that day. Jesus said unto her, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this? Now he just got done telling her something that could offer her some comfort in this time. But drop on down. This gets very interesting. Drop down to about verse 34. And Jesus asked, Well, where have you laid him? And they said unto him, Lord, come and see. And Jesus wept. But look next. Then said the Jews, Behold, how he loved him. It was in the Lord's sorrow that they can tell, truly, that he loved this man. Yeah. So the question that I ask you tonight, that needs to be asked and answered of all of us, is when is the last time that you have wept? If you have found yourself not having had the ability to weep over a lost loved one in your family or a backslidden loved one, weep over the sin of your life, the effects that it's caused you and others, or weep over any number of things that can bring us sorrow, check that, because here you see it was in his sorrow to where they knew he loved him. When a brother or a sister is overtaken in a fault, and I speak to Christians, do we go to them and offer them comfort and put an arm around them and weep with them? Maybe not try to correct the behavior, but just be there. Life sometimes is harder for others than it is for others. I don't know about you, but I've been in some places in my life where I never thought that I would get out. And if the Lord had not sent somebody to shine a light to direct me back to my path, I would have died in the wilderness. But nobody ever came to me and necessarily corrected me. The light was always someone that was there for me, that let me know that the Lord loves you. Right where you're at. He don't love what you're doing. He don't love the damage you're causing, but he loves you. Now you need to come back to the fold kind of thing. Let's take a look at the book of Psalm, chapter 56, verse 8. Psalm chapter 56, verse 8. Thou tellest my wanderings. Put thou my tears into thy bottle. Are they not in thy book? To say thou tellest my wanderings is to say you keep an account of what I do. Put my tears into the bottle. Are they not in thy book? Is to say, do you not remember my tears? Make no mistake about it. The times that we've been broken over our sin, or broken over the loss of a loved one, or broken over these things that would cause us to weep and sorrow, that God has not failed to remember those. And it's okay to weep. I am guilty of trying to hold that emotion back. I don't want to show that vulnerability. But in order to weep, you have to have a tender heart. If you can't weep, maybe the heart has gotten callous. You don't have to go there for the sake of time, but over in Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 2, it says that it's better to go to the house of mourning than to the house of feasting. I think because if we're given to the house of feasting where everything is hee, ha, ha, go balls all the time, life's a party and a tailgate party, and we just live for the weekend and the boats, and life's just this big old grand thing. What it does is it helps us forget what Solomon said about life. It says anything that's done outside of the Lord and for the Lord is vanity. All is vanity. That means it's an all-consuming but never fulfilled consumption of things, whatever that thing is, and we're all subject to it. So maybe it's a call to come back to the house of mourning and ask the Lord to search our hearts. What is it that I need to be broken over? That I need to weep for? If it's someone in my family, if it's me, if it's, you name it. Only the Lord can show you. But if He does show you, and He cracks the door open, don't be afraid. Lean into that. Over in Romans chapter 12, verse 15, Paul writes, rejoice with them that rejoice and weep with them that weep. Sometimes you just have to sit down with somebody and have a good cry and say, and weeping necessarily is not just wailing and rending your clothes in two. It's sitting down with someone and empathizing where they're at in life. I know people in here that have gone through sickness. I have failed on my part to actually extend that hand and sit down with them and empathize. I've prayed for them. I've cared for them. But how would you know that if it took the Lord weeping for them to see then, oh, He loved them because of His sorrow? See? Sometimes you got to show people, I am empathizing with you and I'm sorrowful for what you're going through, for them to be able to see that. But here's the point of the whole thing, over in Psalm chapter 30, verse 5, and I would like for you to lay eyes on this verse, if you will. If you find yourself in here, you know you're saved, you know you're on your way to heaven, you've got, or at one time, have had the joy down in your heart. And as you go through life, you know sometimes that joy kind of comes and goes based on not the Lord, but based on our fellowship in relation to Him. Sometimes that joy gets snuffed out. If you want that joy, like you remember when you first got saved, you could walk around singing dippity-doo-dah, doing heel clicks, because life was, there's nothing better. As the pastor says, the sky was bluer and the grass was greener. Yeah. And then that thing just kind of gets stale as time goes on. But if you want that joy back, it's not a one-time and done deal. The Lord wants you to walk in the light as He is in the light and not after the flesh. Right. Psalm chapter 30 verse 5 says, for His anger endureth but a moment. In His favor is life. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. If you want the joy restored, you're going to have to search out, like David asked the Lord, search my heart if there's any unclean thing. You have to ask the Lord to search it out and show you, submit it to the Lord, repent of it, confess it, whatever you've got to do, even if it means weeping over it. Because what does He say here? Joy comes in the morning. If you don't find yourself weeping over it, you're probably not going to have any joy in your Christian life. Lastly, go to Luke chapter 7. And I want to show you a lady here that the pastor touched on earlier that wept. She had a different motive. Luke chapter 7, verse 37. I'm going to read all this to you. If you ring the bell on me, don't run me out. You'll have to come up here and pick me up and carry me out. I'm not moving. I want you to hear the words written down by the Lord and ask the Lord to speak to your heart, because without Him making the word life, it's just noise. And one of the Pharisees, about verse 36, and one of the Pharisees desired him that he would eat with him. And he went into the Pharisee's house and sat down to meat. And behold, a woman in the city, which was a sinner, which she knew that Jesus sat at meat in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster box of ointment, and stood at his feet behind him, weeping, and began to wash his feet with tears, and did wipe them with the hairs of her head, and kissed his feet, and anointed them with the ointment. Now when the Pharisee had bidden him saw it, he spake within himself, saying, This man, if he were a prophet, would have known who and what manner of woman this was that touches him, for she is a sinner. And Jesus answered and said unto him, Simon, I have somewhat to say unto thee. And he said, Master, say on. Listen, there was a certain creditor which had 2 debtors. The one owed 500 pence, and the other 50. And when they had nothing to pay, he frankly forgave them both. Tell me, therefore, which one will love him most? Simon answered and said, I suppose that he to whom he forgave most. And he said unto him, Thou hast rightly judged. And he turned to the woman and said unto Simon, Seest thou this woman? I entered into thine house. Thou gavest me no water for my feet, but she washed my feet with tears and wiped them with the hairs of her head. Thou gavest me no kiss, but this woman, since the time I came in, hath not ceased to kiss my feet. My head with oil thou didst not anoint, but this woman hath anointed my feet with ointment. Wherefore I say unto thee, her sins, which are many, are forgiven. For she loved much, but to whom little is forgiven, the same loveth little. And they that sat at meat with him began to say within themselves, Who is this that forgiveth sins also? And he said to the woman, Thy faith hath saved thee, go in peace. My. What do you got to do to wash somebody's feet with your tears? How humble do you have to be? Well, he tells you right here, she was forgiven for much. And those tears are written down and they're remembered. And yours will be written down and remembered if you humble yourself to the Lord and go back to that place to where when you got saved, you would have washed his feet with your tears. We need to come back to that place and keep that close kind of fellowship. Because I'm going to tell you, the night you die, if you were saved, it's going to make that right there look like a Sunday picnic. The love and the beauty of heaven is something that nobody can describe. It's a very intimate thing. Don't let it take you by complete surprise. You need to have that relationship here. That's a good start. In closing with you, I've not always lived a good Christian life. Due not only for my salvation, but for the Lord extending forgiveness and restoring fellowship with me when I knew better. That's where the zeal comes from. And I do love him very much.